about how we use internet versus back then, back when we were in grad school, or back when we were in undergrad, and how our students use the internet today. So we use the internet for research. How many of you had to do research? How many of y'all remember the first time using a web browser? It was actually when they moved the card catalog for your library online, and then you basically, so I'm going to go to a computer to find a book somewhere in this vast stacks, yes? And then of course we had email, which, you know, as one professor said, the importance of the professor was inversely proportional to the speed of his reaction to email. So the more important, the longer they would take. And we would use it for work. Now, how do students use the internet today? First of all, they're usually not on a computer. What are they on? They're on a smartphone, tablet. What are they doing? They're taking selfies. They're sharing images on Instagram. They're on Twitter. They might be on Amazon. Music. They're using it for entertainment. Well, let's think about some of these entertainment modes and apps for a moment. So, how many of you listen to podcasts for your own recreation? And most of the things you listen to for your own recreation, what are they? What's yours?
I don't know. I listen to Christian podcasts.
Sermons.
Yeah, sermons.
Okay.
Political commentary.
Political commentary.
TED Talks.
TED Talks.
Professional wrestling recaps.
Professional wrestling recap. Well, fundamentally, a TED Talk, a sermon, and political commentary. What are all of these, if you think about it? They are really what? Lectures. When we're doing a PowerPoint, or when we're working with the document camera, we can record that and we can turn it into a video. And you can put it on YouTube. I have really boring videos of how to correct a mathematics test still on YouTube. Haven't gotten that many hits. I had one of my algebra students actually give me a dislike, which I was like, the alternative was the video doesn't exist. How many of you have done those junk surveys on social media? The Are You a Genius quiz or something like that. Well, fundamentally, what is an online quiz? But really, I mean, it could be used as a read check. It could be used as a quiz. And how many of you were like, oh, the projector's not working in my room. I'm going to leave a note on the door. Hey, we're going next door because stuff comes up. What's a messaging app? It's a note on the door. And so I want you to start thinking about how we can do what we do and let the technology let us do what we do. And you know what's even more fun about letting technology do what you do? You can be a traditional instructor, and your department chair, your principal, your supervisor will come in and they'll see you doing all this high-tech stuff, and they're like, oh my God, they've embraced the new way of thinking. They've drunk the Kool-Aid. And we have them fooled, don't we? Okay, the way I like to think about this is, it's your show. Fundamentally, how many of you, when you do your classroom thing, you're like, I am on the stage and it's my show. Sage on the stage, we love it because we love our subject, we love humanity, but there is that kernel of it of, we like to perform. Ain't no shame in that. Be honest. And so the way I like to do it, and I'm going to tell you sort of a quick story of how I got into podcasting. And I'm behind on actually updating because, again, most of it's like stuff for class. Is I had a student come to me and she said, Mr. Siberian, I'm going to be at a series of stock shows this date, this date, this date, and this date. And I don't want to miss any of your lecture content. And she asked, can my friend so-and-so record your lectures? How many of you have been asked to by a student if they could record? How many of you get a little uncomfortable with somebody else asking to record? I mean, we've all seen the nightmares of, you know, professor says this thing out of context. The next thing you know, it's on Fox News. And you don't want to be that guy or that gal who got their stuff taken out of context, and next thing you know, you're on the TV news. I mean, you want to be famous, but you don't want to be infamous, right? So as I'm going through my head of what could possibly go wrong if I had this student record, because normally if I had a situation like that, I said, well, no, just have your friends take notes for you. And I was like, you know, I could record. And if I record, who's in control? I am. And so now I'm recording a show. I have a live studio audience. I might get meaningful questions from the audience. And it is a deeply personal experience, but it's fleeting. But in an online course, you have that capacity for instant replay. How many of you have watched a training video and you're like, how many of you have done like one of those home improvement YouTubes where you're like, wait, how do I do this? And you didn't get it the first time, so what do? You watch it again. Wouldn't you love it if your kids could get the instant replay on you? And it's always there. And you can give handouts without actually having to print anything, which nobody likes to waste their life in front of a copier. Now, how many of you remember those profs? Do y'all remember in college where they had those note-taking services that they would offer to go to the prof's class and they'd keep notes for those degenerates who wouldn't show up to class and wanted to sleep in? Y'all don't remember those? Okay, there were a few note-taking services when I was at UT back in the 90s. And they had to have the prof's permission because, you know, intellectual property, right? And there were some profs who said yes, and there were some profs who said no. What do you think the profs who said no, why do you think they said no?
Because they want the student to show up.
They want the student to show up. If somebody else takes the notes, or if I record it and put it out there, they won't show up. In the era of online courses, guess what? They're not showing up anyway. And so what's really nice about what has happened with the online world is the people who want to show up to your face-to-face, they're going to show up. Because could they have taken it online? Yes.